Okay, I think we might get started. So welcome everybody. My name is Joanna Watt. I'm a senior portfolio manager at EPSRC, and I sit within the information and communication technology team. So I look after semiconductors and also international activities for the team. And I'm leading this funding opportunity for EPSRC. See if I can get slides to move on. There we go. So welcome to this webinar on the Canada-UK NetworkPlus in semiconductor research. This is being recorded, and we will share this recording on the call webinar at the call page online on the UKRI funding finder. My slides are just being a little bit slow to move forwards, but we'll just bear with me. So just to give you a quick, that's okay. I'm getting there, Glenn, I think. Just to give you a quick overview of the agenda for the webinar. So a short welcome and some housekeeping from me. Then I'll hand over to Glenn, who will give the introduction to EPSRC. Then we'll hear a little bit about the UK semiconductor academic research and development landscape, followed by the Canadian semiconductor academic research and development landscape. Then a tour of kind of the funding opportunity and what we as EPSRC expect to see in applications, followed by the opportunity for some question and answers. My slides are just being very slow to keep going, but they do eventually move forwards. So an overview for the webinar, we're going to introduce EPSRC for anybody not familiar with us, provide information on both the UK and Canadian academic semiconductor research and development landscapes, summarise the call, and expand on the requirements and give you an opportunity to ask questions. So for asking questions, if you could please type your questions in the Q&A box, which you access using the button at the top of Teams. We will then group and prioritise questions if necessary, but hopefully we'll have the opportunity to give you answers to all of those questions on the call today. If there are too many for us to answer, then we'll create a frequently asked questions document, and we can add that onto the call as well. Just a little bit of housekeeping, I think, coming up on the next slide. So if you do have questions, type them into the box. And because the chat function, I think, is disabled on this call. And I've already mentioned that's going to be recorded. So just to go through the timeline for the call is already open. It opened on the 2nd of July. And it's open for 10 weeks because, unfortunately, the timing of it falls over the school holidays for UK applicants. So we've extended the opening time to 10 weeks to give applicants time to form the best collaborations and applications possible. We will then review those within EPSRC using our peer review, which I'll talk about later. We'll be inviting people to an interview panel and to give applicant responses in October, and we'll be holding the interview panel in November, hoping to communicate decisions as soon as possible after that. Because the start date for this award is the 1st of January in 2026. I think that's my last slide when it ticks over to the next one. So I'd like to move on to introduce Glenn, who is Glenn Goodall, the head of ICT at EPSRC, who's going to introduce EPSRC, the UK semiconductor landscape, and some reasons for funding this call. So over to you, Glenn.
No problem. So first of all, just for those who don't know, just a bit of a view of EPSRC and the research councils in the United Kingdom. So we're one of 9 research councils that you can see on there. You might know Innovate UK from other calls, and we're all part of something called UK Research and Innovation, which is in turn our kind of host department within government is the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. So our exec chair is currently Professor Charlotte Dean, you can see on the left, And on the right, you can see the Chief Executive of UKRI, who is Professor Dame Ottiline Lacer for now. So this is just a little bit of an overview of EPSRC and some of the bits and bobs that we do in number form. I'm not going to go into too much detail. If you're interested, you can look this up. But it's mostly to flag that it's about £1 billion a year spend, approaching 4,000 active grants at the moment. But it's mostly to look at the number of students, the number of PIs that we have in the UK, and also just to flag that there are also technical professionals that we fund as well. So technicians looking after equipment and things like that, but also research software engineers. And then bottom right, you can see there's the kind of frontier technologies, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. Semiconductors is one of them, and this is the kind of how much we kind of funded in the last year in that area. So this is the EPSRC strategy on a slide, which I always love. And there's just to point out that we have two modes of operation. So there's this discovery-led research, which is the kind of bottom down. Bottom up even. Academics can apply for research whenever they like, when they're ready. And it's generally within kind of distinct areas such as ICT, physical sciences, maths, engineering. And semiconductors kind of fits roughly between all of those things as well. So physical sciences, you've got advanced materials and things like that, and engineering, obviously, for devices. And then we have the other way, which is mission-inspired research, which is top down. This is calls. So this is what we're talking about today, a call. Generally, it's in the areas of net zero, AI, healthcare, quantum, those sorts of things. And in the middle, we have our kind of ecosystem, which is kind of talent and skills, there's place, there's impact, business engagement, international, world-class labs. So that's EPSRC on a slide. So you may or may not have noticed that there's a industrial strategy has only just been launched in the UK. And within that, if you've had a little browse, there are 8 sectors which are kind of identified for growth in the UK, which you can see there. And the one that's of most relevance today is digital and technologies. So this one, so there's a 10-year vision for this sector, and there's a kind of ambitious vision for the UK to be one of the top 3 places in the world to create, invest, and scale up for faster growth of technology businesses. And then you can see at the bottom, there are 6 frontier technologies. So there's AI, there's communication systems, quantum technologies, cybersecurity, engineering, biology, and then the last one, semiconductors, which kind of fits in today. Sorry, this is a very busy slide, a big wall of text. We're trying to show kind of what we've funded in this area already and what's going to be delivering that sector plan. So at the top, we have eFutures Network, which has been running since 2010, which brings together researchers and people working with electronic systems in the UK. Sorry, that was my doorbell, if you heard that. And then we've recently funded 4 what we call innovation and knowledge centres, which are about the push of ideas and research towards market. So we have one around heterogeneous integration. There's another one around kind of ultra-wide bandgap. And then there's another one around photonics, innovation. And then the last one, neuromorphic computing. So we've had 2 tranches. So Rewire and Cornerstone, the 2 in the middle, they've been launched already. And then coming up soon, which we're kind of highlighted in that sector plan, are Chime Squared and the neuromorphic computing hardware, IKC. So also just to flag that there's a kind of organic, if you like, UK neuromorphic computing program that's kind of occurring in the UK at the moment. And this crosses EPSRC, BBSRC, STFC and Innovate UK. So for our part, we funded a network in the area to bring the community and industry together. There's a multidisciplinary research centre, which is about addressing some of those challenges that are needed to move the dial. And then lastly, there's a piece around innovation and push to market, which is that IKC we just spoke about. And then Innovate UK are looking at kind of collaborative research and development and other bits and pieces. And then you can see there's hardware in the middle as well that we're looking at. And then the other kind of 2 big investments in this area are the National F-Taxi facility for producing wafers and the National Ion Beam Centre as well, which are accessible by UK academics through grants, basically. This is part of our world-class labs initiative. So I guess the last thing I want to say is just to kind of answer that question: why are we launching this call? Which you might be thinking, might have that question on the tip of your tongue. Essentially, it's to deliver that industrial strategy is the first part. But there's also to note that Canada and the UK in 2024 signed an MOU around cooperation in kind of scientific research and innovation. And this is about aiming to kind of strengthen bilateral collaborations and deliver excellence and impact across fields, which could include semiconductors. And then also we had very colloquially, we've had a survey recently of our kind of research community in ICT, and Canada was noted as one of the top 5 kind of priority international partners. And then I guess it's around recognizing that there's complementary capability, expertise, and facilities in both countries around semiconductors. So it's like a like with like kind of relationship. So it seemed like a no-brainer to us. And there's that opportunity to build on any existing relationships that are already there. And also to be complementary to some Innovate UK activity that's also happening with Canada. So basically lots of opportunities. This is the first kind of step towards some kind of joint activity between the UK and Canada in this area. And potentially we hope it can develop into something larger in the future. So next, we've got a video from Professor Roger Woods from Queen's University Belfast, just around the semiconductor landscape, academic landscape in the UK. This is a video, so Joanna, if you can hear the sound, can you put your thumb up and I'll let that play.
Everyone, my name
we
is
can hear.
Roger Woods from Queen's University Belfast, and the EPSRC ICT team have asked me to provide an introduction to the academic UK semiconductor research and development ecosystem. I thought I would start off by briefly describing to you what the eFutures or Electronic Systems Futures Network has been involved in. It's been an EPSRC funded network that is looking at current and future electronic systems with a particular focus on encouraging interdisciplinary research. We've really organised into 4 major activities. The first is looking at strategic development, where we've linked to key priorities both for the government and EPSRC. And we've been establishing and supporting trajectories really from the research community to try and meet these requirements. We've also really looked at sort of challenge-led activities generated by the community, and have organised events around particular topic areas with obviously a focus on sustainability. A very strong focus is community, and we're looking to try and build and strengthen the academic links and also the links with industry in the area of electronic systems. As part of the more recent activities, we've been looking at exploring international links, and throughout our existence, there's obviously been a strong multidisciplinary focus as electronic systems is a key enabling technology. Obviously, an issue for this particular community is the pipeline, both of academics, but also the researchers. So again, we've been trying to engage and organise events both for early career researchers and mid-career researchers, look at providing training, and obviously looking at this from a holistic ecosystem perspective. The network is a collaborative project, and whilst it's led by Queen's, we have direct involvement in the following universities. And obviously, you can see that these universities are geographically spread across the UK and obviously have traditional strengths in electronic systems, whether that's in the design or fabrication aspect of the research domain. As part of that activity, we were commissioned by EPSRC, again with support through DSIT, the Department of Science, Information Technology, to undertake a major review on semiconductor research and development and really the UK landscape. I don't need to speak to this community to obviously emphasise the importance of semiconductor technology and the ability to have both a sovereign design and manufacturing capability. There's obviously a very strong focus on the research. The quality of UK research in semiconductors is recognised worldwide. And the focus of the report was to try and do an analysis of that expertise, and then also to look at the links both within the UK, but also internationally, with the idea of planning longer-term activities. So as I mentioned, the report or the activities started in January of last year. DCIT are a major stakeholder, and we really feel that we're representing the academic voice, which I don't think has been heard as strongly in the National Semiconductor Strategy or in a lot of the previous reports that have been generated. Through a series of meetings, we've also facilitated novel international collaborations, largely focused on the UK, but obviously exploring wider domains of which this effectively fits in, but also looking to inform longer-term strategic investments in this space as well. The major activity we carried out is the landscaping one, and that's been mapping and quantifying UK academic strengths. And that's led to a sector report, which we launched on Monday just past, and I'll provide links to that for you at the end of the presentation. We're at the stage now where we're developing the international picture. So we're scoping and establishing opportunities for global collaboration. And that's obviously a research study, but also has been through the organizations of a number of international meetings. And obviously this project fits well within that collaboration strategy. And then the final stage is horizon scanning, where we're looking to do strategic foresight and scenario building to enable prioritization, primarily for the EPSRC around the UK academic research portfolio, but also more generally to enhancing the UK's strengths in semiconductors. So the recommendations out of that report fell into 7 major areas. The first was prioritization, and we identified advancing semiconductor materials, novel IC architectures, hybrid and heterogeneous systems. It was also to establish prototyping facilities at different TRL levels, very basic levels for universities to do and implement basic structures, but then at much higher TR levels, and those activities or those facilities would be shared, I think, with industry, particularly SMEs. We were looking to establish communities of practice. There's a lot of good research throughout the UK, but we need to both increase that capability, but also grow clusters of strength and get much more collaboration occurring. The next 2 topics are coming into securing talent. It's also to try and improve the UK offer, whether that's at an academic or researcher level, but also provide the opportunity for academics and researchers to commercialize their research more effectively and easily. We want to grow the workforce, particularly the educated workforce. So the target's to look at 150 PhD researchers per year. Obviously, commercialization, as we mentioned above, but to look at reducing the IP burdens within universities, but also looking to enhance the VC funding engagement and link a lot of good activities that are ongoing at the minute and try and really supercharge those with the idea of enhancing the commercialization from universities. And I think for the National Semiconductor Centre, we strongly felt that it needed to deliver specific and measurable impact and unite expertise. So the areas I was asked to quickly highlight, one of those is compound semiconductors. Again, this is a key enabling technology in the EC's Horizon 2020 economic strategy. And obviously, there's a lot of activity in South Wales, so the compound semiconductor between IQE and part of the university. Is a prime example of that. But we also have the KTC Rewire, which is looking at advancing high voltage electronic devices with cutting edge compound semiconductors. The key aspects we found from the community, there was an urgent need to develop technology at a smaller scale, but also to integrate the materials into devices to demonstrate functionality before we really did scaling up, and that probably would be with industry. with a key focus looking to improve energy efficiency of devices. Ensuring a resilient supply chain was deemed to be important, particularly for those that are not abundant, such as silicon, is a major concern. So I think putting that in place at an industrial and research level is seen as important. And some of the key challenges was looking at emerging materials, so solution for accessible semiconductors and their integration was one of the areas, but also looking at new materials for sustainability, climate, to drive technological advances. In photonics, the real focus around here is looking at semiconductors that use light waves instead of electrical currents to transfer information. And there's obviously massive areas in communications linking particularly data centers. And we all know about the growth of data centers worldwide and obviously in the UK as well. But there's also emerging markets within LiDAR, also in sensing as well, and as the sort of underlying aspect of quantum technologies. And whilst there's a lot of focus on quantum, I think the development of both photonics and semiconductor technology in the short term is going to be essential for the delivery of what people are looking at in the quantum area. The Cornerstone IKC has been specifically established to support silicon photonics with the semiconductor strategy, and obviously being an IKC, the focus is to help researchers transition innovations to market and support industry partner projects. The community also identified there was a need for industrial collaboration, but there was a concern about the lack of large companies in the UK photonics sector. So again, that's probably an area where international collaboration could majorly benefit the UK and also those companies looking to develop that technology. Under NEMS and MEMS, MEMS and microsensors is seen as a key means of reducing the size, weight, and costing of sensors for sensing and imaging and measurement equipment. So obviously very important in a lot of the physical aspects of where we want to develop measurements, whether that's within manufacture, agriculture, or across a range of application areas. It very much relies on silicon micromachining. That's a fundamental tool for enabling the fabrication of such devices. And the community and the responses we've seen identified a need to strengthen links with international foundries and improve access to PDKs and standard tools for lower barriers to innovation and scaling. The state aid rules post-Brexit still limit the ability of industries to effectively fund their research, which is really putting the UK at a disadvantage. And that's something I think that needs to be overcome to see the potential for this. Under advanced packaging, it's obviously an acknowledged strength in the UK, and there's particular expertise in the form of wafer dicing, die, and wire bonding. And a lot of this work is taking place in the National Advanced Semiconductor Packaging and Integration Centre, which has just been launched as part of the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland. And this will again allow for preparing and dicing of wafers, mounting and connecting devices, testing and sealing devices in the final packaging. So I think that's going to strengthen the aspects of what we're trying to do in the UK. There's obviously some good expertise in the University of Southampton in cutting edge e-beam technology, and that's part of the major announcement that's been made in the last few months. So again, a gradual build-up of infrastructure with international links and investment would help de-risk and support smaller scale manufacturing, because again, a lot of this is very specific to what people are looking to do. Obviously, under chip design, the UK has had considerable strengths in chip design, particularly processors, if we think of primarily ARM, which obviously has been one of the most successful companies really in Europe over the last 20 years. But we've also had other companies more recently, Graphcore. Silicon Catalyst, which under the EPSRC program is actively having a campaign there to support companies with less than 1.5 million in funding. So again, the strong links between the university and commercialization, I think, represents a major opportunity. The community felt that there needed to be a bridge between the design and fabrication communities, but there obviously is a considerable strength in reconfigurable hardware within the UK community. They'd be well recognised for that expertise worldwide. I think the opportunities are really around embracing open source design community and tool chains for a range of different technology areas such as analog, digital, RF, and photonic design. And again, part of this focus of this work really should be to protect national infrastructure from potential threats. So again, the ability to design technologies and securely get them made within the UK is a key part of protecting that national infrastructure. And also then when we're looking at collaboration, there needs to be much clearer checks on export control with international collaborations as well. As I mentioned in the start, we've just launched the Semiconductor Research and Development UK Academic Landscape document. I would thoroughly encourage you to read that. We have spent over 7,000 hours with various academics, some of whom may be in the room. We have a steering committee of which we've agreed the recommendations which are briefly described, but we've included a lot of the summary of the discussions we've had from the numerous meetings and the appendices. And I think you'll find that that's a really valuable read. And I would strongly encourage you to look at that. So if you look at the eFutures website, you'll see it under the impact reports. And I think it's written in such a way that it's very much written with a Whitehall view at the start of it, but there's a lot of very detailed technical information at the back end. So hopefully that gives you some appreciation of the background with it all. I wish you the best, and I hope that you have an enjoyable afternoon finding out more about this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing that, Glenn. And yeah, so thanks to Roger Woods from Queen's University Belfast, who he wasn't able to be with us today. We have been joined by Professor Douglas Paul from the University of Glasgow, who's kindly agreed to act on the panel for the Q&A session and answer any questions that people might have about the UK semiconductor landscape. So hi, Doug, and thanks very much for joining us. I'm going to hand over now for the next session, which is an introduction to the Canadian semiconductor R&D system. So I'm handing over to Mr. Gordon Harling, who's the CEO of CMC Microsystems in Canada. Hi, Gord, I'll let you share your slides. Thanks very much. Just to confirm, okay. We can see those. That's great.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes, just so you don't feel too alienated, my mother was born in Yorkshire, Bygone. So pleased to talk about Canadian capabilities. You may find some of this. I got very excited in the last video because there's a lot of stuff I think that we can collaborate on. Whoops. If I can just get this to move. There we go. So CMC was originally incorporated as the Canadian Microelectronics Corporation back in 1983, and since then we've expanded a bit, and so we rebranded about 20 years ago as CMC Microsystems, and now we supply services across Canada for microelectronics, photonics, IoT, AI, MEMS, and quantum technologies, both software and hardware. So we serve about 12,500 unique students and researchers every year, and we have about 1,200 industrial participants in our network. And what we do for them is we buy CAD tools, or we help you to buy CAD tools, and then we host them in the cloud, and we can connect up process design kits to those tools so that you can design into real-world foundries. As I say, we serve over 12,000 people with CAD tools, and then about 400 of those go to fab and do a prototype with us. Our key partner is the Global Foundries, but we provide access to TSMC, Advanced Micro Foundries in Singapore, Science in the US, a number of other foundries around. And we're just working towards a cornerstone right now. And finally, on the lab side, we do generate intellectual property. A lot of it is open source, which anyone can access. RISC-V processors, we're a partner for ARM. We have a number of capabilities there on the IP side, and provide you tools and platforms. In Canada, we're connected to 69 post-secondary institutions. They've signed a technology user agreement with us. There are almost 1,500 professors and their research groups connected to us. And there are only 97 universities in Canada. So the only ones that aren't part of our network are pretty much liberal arts colleges. And we're in every province. I just thought this would be interesting for you, is that although we're still about 40% electrical and computer engineering, many other groups come to us. And so when it comes to semiconductors, when you start talking about photonics, when you start talking about MEMS, you get into mechanical engineering. So we have many other disciplines. And the beauty of that is our network now includes all of these folks who can do odd and wonderful things in competition with you and be synergistic. And of course, quantum computing was 0 5 years ago, and today we have 195 researchers who identify as quantum researchers. Every year, I saw your 150 PhDs number. Every year, we push out about 1,800 people. About half of those go straight to Canadian industry. Another quarter or so continue their training or go to academic institutions, and about a quarter go back home to wherever home may be. So we're very pleased with that, and these are all STEM graduates from various bits of engineering and sciences. And then here's sort of a 3-year view. You can see it's relatively stable. So about 5,000 grads over the last 3 years, and we're just waiting for the 24-25 numbers. There are some clusters in Canada of high tech, and so I've shown them here. There's Vancouver and Edmonton in the west, and then all along the southernmost border, you can see the clusters of various companies in high tech. There are not jobs numbers and percentage growth there, just so you can get a bit of an idea. And so we're connected with all of these companies, and we can provide you with introductions should you need them. We don't ignore the world, and so we do have, this is a slightly older view, but we have customers all over the world now as well, in about 130 countries, or sorry, 130 customers in 22 countries, I think. So lots of activity there. I was asked specifically to talk about prototyping capability. So there are 43 labs actually connected to universities across Canada. They all have slightly different capabilities. The CCEM is electron microscopy. They have FIB. They can do some wonderful things with electron beams and ion beams. We have the University of Alberta NanoFab, the 3IT in Sherbrooke, and 40 labs. They are all quite large labs that actually provide millions of dollars worth of commercial fabrication. So they actually take customers through their prototypes and then ramp them up into larger volumes. So I think that's a really good fit with a lot of what you do is very prototype-y, and it needs a path to full production. So in fact, in Quebec, we've created an innovation chain that can take you right from lab to high volume. And here's one of the elements of that is the C2MI in Quebec is associated with the University of Sherbrooke. Sherbrooke has the 3IT, which is the prototyping fab. This is a full 8-inch MEMS fab, which is also adding on photonics and superconductors currently. So a very significant capability to do hundreds of wafers if you get that far. And what used to be called the Institut National d'Optique, the AINO in Quebec City, also has a wide range of MEMS capabilities and photonics capabilities, including packaging and characterization. So a very powerful area, clean room, 840 meters squared. Millimeters. And research support. So lots of programs in Canada. Some of them are international. So the Industrial Research Assistance Program pays for your research expenses. You pre-approve a project and then work on it. And you can actually submit your claims quarterly. You can get up to 75% of your research expenses back. That's for Canadian companies. MyTax pays for half of the cost of students to work on an industrial co-op term. So in Canada, it's $7,500 from the company, $7,500 from MyTax. And in fact, CMC ran one of these, and we had 4 students from Canada and 2 students at ETH Zurich, so a 2-to-1 ratio. But they actually paid the $7,500 to the students in Zurich. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough for them to live on, and so the university had to top it up a bit. That's welcome to Canada. For companies working in Canada as well, there are scientific research and experimental development tax credits, what we call SHREDs, and they reimburse your expenses on R&D coupled to tax returns. They can get as high as 65% of all of your costs back as a check if you're a small enterprise, and that just means you need an entity in Canada where the research is being done. And the National Science and Engineering Research Council, or NSERC, oops, I missed an R in there, sorry. Has various programs. Typically, they do 2-to-1 matching, and that includes matching from companies outside of Canada. So if you put in $50,000 a year, they will put $100,000 a year to match it, and all of that money flows to a research group in Canada who then do the work for you. Now, you have to do a bit of negotiation up front to make sure that you own the IP rights. Every university in Canada seems to have a different policy, but we can help you through that. And then there are a number of large institutes. There are 3 quantum institutes in Canada, which they were granted $360 million over 7 years. There's a project for sovereign high-performance computing, which is $2.4 billion over 5 years. There's the Canadian Light Source in Saskatchewan and Triumph in BC for nuclear studies. Lots of interesting capability and functionality that you can access. And then there are a number of other examples. There are 3 councils, one for health research, one for social sciences, and NSERC we've already mentioned. And then all of these other programs are pretty much in Quebec. So Quebec is very keen on research and on funding these initiatives. They punch above their weight. About 10 years ago, Canada created the innovation superclusters, which they renamed about 3 years ago Global Innovation Clusters, and they were about $3 billion co-investment with industry. And in these 3 different areas, obviously, sadly none on semiconductor, but pretty close. We work a lot with digital technology and with Scale AI and the Oceans right now at CMC. And then there are these SIF networks, a Strategic Innovation Fund, and they provide $1.2 billion in SIF funding. And CMC actually operates one of these called Fabric, which I'll talk about in a minute. The National Research Council has well over $1 billion a year in funding. They operate about 40 labs across Canada, and they support policy objectives in defense, natural resources, environment, and so on. They have collaborative challenge programs where you can actually make an application to a challenge call. The IRAP program, we just mentioned, Industrial Research Assistance, which is a reimbursement of your funds. And then direct engagement with the 40 or so research centers through research agreements. So lots of interesting technology there. They have specifically a compound semiconductor fabrication facility called the CPFC, Canadian Photonics Fabrication Center, with 90 staff and 1,900 meters squared of clean room space. They're just doing a $100 million expansion right now because they actually do a lot of commercial work, and it has been eating them up. So they're in the happy situation of doing an expansion. They also do silicon and silicon nitride PIC design. We actually partner with them on that. And they do challenge programs, as I previously mentioned, in high throughput and secure networks, especially for the north of Canada, quantum sensing and quantum internetworking. Another group is the National Science and Engineering Research Council, the NSERC. And so they have, again, $1.3 billion in funding, and they subsidize Canadian researchers. This is very much an academic research kind of thing, and they catalyze training for HQP, or highly qualified personnel. Internationally, of course, NSERC has programs that are available to other countries, the critical minerals and quantum in the UK, US, France, Taiwan, and so on. So we're very present on the national scene. Whoops, what have I done? So we at CMC proposed a project to actually do fabrication of integrated circuits in Canada. I use the word integrated circuits a bit liberally, but it has big goals for developing new processes in Canada, in Canadian fabs, which are then offered as MPWs worldwide. There's a lot of design work stuff, and the commercialization aspect of this is done through IoT. So there are IoT challenge calls where people can get subsidized to develop their next-gen device connected to the internet somehow. So the funding is $120 million from the Strategic Innovation Fund, and another $103 million from other sources, including the companies that are subsidized and so on. So this was announced last year in July and is ongoing. It focuses on quantum compound semiconductors, quantum devices, photonics devices, mechanical sensors, and the Internet of Things, which is the commercialization sort of focus. So we did a call last year. We had 138 expressions of interest from more than the entire 5-year budget. We had to whittle that down to half of those, and then those went in for proposals, and of the proposals, 20 were granted, and they've just been rolled out, a total of $34 million in projects in those first 20 proposals. I noticed that there was a little thing about design expertise and so on. So there are a variety of advantages for Canadian design shops, and so that's why we have this list at the bottom. Many foreign multinationals put design centers in Canada, and they find that they have excellent return on investment from those design centers, so they tend to grow. So there are probably 10,000 engineers, we don't have an official census, across Canada in various design shops for these multinationals. I didn't include Huawei in the list, but they actually have a number of folks here as well. And of course, the R&D tax credits can cover up to 65% of salaries plus overhead. Multinationals don't get that much. They get about 30%, but it's a very attractive bonus. Low overheads, universal health care, work ethic, etc. And I'll just very quickly skip through production capability because we do have the CPFC for compound semiconductors. Teledyne, ostensibly the world's largest open MEMS foundry with 30 or 40 different processes for doing different kinds of MEMS devices. They have 2 plants, one in Quebec and one in Alberta. Silicon Photonics at a variety of different centers, and Teledyne are also looking at it now. And superconductors, there's a new building on the Sherbrooke campus that is doing superconducting devices for us now, and soon the C2MI on 8-inch will be doing superconductors as well. And I can't go on without mentioning packaging. So the largest outsourced semiconductor assembly and test facility in all of North America by a factor of about 3 is in Quebec. And so this is the IBM factory. And there are also a number of other package houses like Jabil, Sanmina, Celestica, and the universities often have a package capability. So if you're interested in any of that, we can point you to the appropriate sources, the appropriate centers, and the appropriate researchers for that. That's it. Did I meet my time?
That was perfect, Gord. Thank you ever so much. Yeah, thank you very much. There's very much a whistle-stop tour, but so much in there, and yeah, lots and lots of information. I'd encourage anybody on the call who'd like to ask questions about the UK or the Canadian semiconductor landscape to pop them in the Q&A. We will hold on to them, and then we'll ask them after we've introduced the funding opportunity. But yes, if anything occurs to you that you'd like to ask, then please do pop that in the Q&A. I'm going to share the slides now just to introduce the call. There we go. Hopefully this should share a little bit better than it did before. So I'm going to introduce the funding opportunity. So the aims and the ambition of EPSRC in running this call, there's been an awful lot of Canadian and UK enthusiasm and activities, and a lot of that has been kind of on the more the more industrial-led opportunities. And so as EPSRC, we felt there was a real gap for an academic to academic funding opportunity to develop that relationship between Canada and the UK. We'd like this to be a starting point to seed relationships and enable engagement between Canada and the UK so that we can identify areas for potential future collaboration. And you'll see that when we come onto the scope, ideally we would keep this as a really wide sort of, overall embracing opportunity for the time being, and then we can narrow that down as some of those opportunities are identified. And we would like to develop a roadmap and a vision for a longer term, larger scale Canada-UK programme or initiative in this area. So the scope, we've put the scope together based on kind of the presentations that you've seen and the policy from both sides, priorities from both the UK and the Canadian government. So we've identified joint areas of interest: compound semiconductors, photonics, advanced packaging, chip design, and NEMs and MEMS. So what we would like to see is an application which focuses on or covers at least 3 of those areas, and that is in line with keeping this as a broad activity that could be narrowed down later on. So there's no reason not to cover all of the scope areas, and I'll talk in a little bit about how we expect that to be covered by the team that's applying. So our expectations is that the NetworkPlus, I think I should first say that NetworkPlus is an EPSRC term, and what it means is a network, in other words, kind of linking people together, and the plus part is that it includes a flexible fund, so some additional money that can be used for other activities beyond the networking. So when I use the term NetworkPlus and network, I'm interchangeably referring to the same thing. So we would want the network or NetworkPlus to build a deep and broad, internationally competitive research network. So you heard from eFutures in terms of the landscaping that they've been doing in semiconductors. eFutures is a network that started out of EPSRC 15 years ago now. So this is the start of a similar network between Canada and the UK. We would like that network to support a really diverse range of researcher to researcher links in the scope areas, so across different career stages and across different sort of areas, not just, you know, any specific area, not, for example, only professor to professor, but really spanning the whole ecosystem, different career stages, different expertise, and across the different scope areas that I've listed. We would like them to foster new connections between relevant communities, to identify complementary expertise, accelerate knowledge transfer, and realise opportunities for mutual benefit and impact on both sides. We would like the network to identify joint and complementary expertise, strengths and opportunities within those 5 scope areas, engage with policy, industry, other stakeholders in both countries, exchange scientific insights, and that could be through training exchange, skills exchange, sending people to or from Canada and the UK to support the research community. And the idea is that we'll enhance both countries' strengths in semiconductor research and the cross-cutting technologies that go alongside that. We would like this to be an open platform, so it should be accessible to the entire academic community in both Canada and the UK, and anybody who would like to be involved, and also look to bring in more partners throughout the course, throughout the lifetime of the award. And this would hopefully prepare the ground for future activities in the scope areas. So the kind of thing that we would expect people who are applying to be looking to do is to convene workshops and events that would enable collaboration, horizon scanning, and bringing together UK and Canadian partners, building and supporting connections to drive collaboration, sort of, you know, discovering what the problems are and co-creating solutions to them jointly, facilitating knowledge exchange. It could include secondments of project leads or co-leads to spend time in Canada to look for those complementary expertise and develop the network. We would like the successful applicants to engage with national funding agencies, so both ourselves as EPSRC, part of UKRI, and also our Canadian counterparts that Gord mentioned in his presentation. And it could also include exchange visits to look at relevant infrastructure and facilities. So this isn't an exhaustive, it might be exhausting. It's not an exhaustive list, and it's not obligatory to include all of these or any of these activities. It is a suggestion for what we would expect to see, but we would encourage applicants to tailor their activities to the scope and to the things that they would like to achieve, and to be innovative in their approach. So we expect the successful applicants to work widely with Canadian collaborators for the duration of the programme. I'll mention this again when we come to the funding, but this initial investment is funding from the UK side. So there are specific ways that you can bring in Canadian collaborators to your award, but we would like to see engagement with Canadian collaborators in the design of the network and at the application stage to present a robust plan of how what that relationship is, and then how you will build on it and expand it during the course of the award. And then the successful network will be introduced to key contacts within the Canadian Semiconductors Research and Innovation System, so that we can make sure that all those activities are linked in. So just to reiterate that there's no need at the application stage to try and engage beyond your known collaborators, because we will manage that for the successful applicant. So we would also like the successful applicant to engage with existing activities that we've already funded. You heard from eFutures and the introduction to the UK landscape, and as part of their wider international landscaping piece that they've now moved on to, they'll be holding a workshop in Canada in November 2025. So we would like to see the outputs and the outcomes from that brought into the design and the sort of successful network. Obviously once they're available. So that'll be after award. There have also been a number of funding opportunities from Innovate UK and the business space. So partnering visits, the Global Innovation Programme, or GBIPS, and a current bilateral funding opportunity for businesses. So where we would like to see, where appropriate, involvement and sort of bringing on board and working with some of those existing opportunities. And there are some other routes, such as MOUs signed between the Compound Semiconductor Applications Catapult and TechWorks, that where appropriate, we would like to see those brought on board and linked into this investment, so that it's really a joined up programme and doesn't duplicate existing activities. So the funding that we have available for this is £1,125,000. That's at the full economic cost. So based on our normal costing model, EPSRC can fund 80% of the full economic costs. UK people on the call will be familiar with that. The remaining 20% comes from their research institution. So the duration of the award is 36 months or 3 years. And we have a fixed start date for this because it's funded through the International Science Partnerships Fund, or ISPF fund, which comes from the government. We expect to make one award, so we'll be only funding one of the applications. What EPSRC is able to fund as part of that is project lead and co-leads salaries. So anybody listed as a project lead or co-lead must be eligible for EPSRC funding. We'll fund travel and subsistence. You can include professional enabling staff such as administrative support or a dedicated network manager to manage the sort of network and administrative aspects. And we'll fund organisation of activities, the workshops and things that I suggested earlier on. And then we also have the potential to put aside some of that fund as a flexible fund for use in other activities, which I'll talk about in a second. In terms of the team scope, I just wanted to expand on this a little bit because we've had some questions through by email already. So the project lead must be able to demonstrate an existing collaboration with Canada in one or more of the areas of the scope, so compound semi, photonics, NEMS, MEMS, advanced packaging and chip design. And then we would expect them to bring in co-leads who could cover other areas of the scope, with potentially a Canadian collaborator or counterpart with whom they've already got some collaboration or existing contact, so that the team as a whole must be able to cover at least 3 of the scope areas. And the reason for that is just to start this as a very broad activity to identify priorities and move forward rather than to focus on one particular area of research. So I think then it's worth saying that not only is that collaboration really important, but I think the team and the leader of the team needs to have the right leadership and sort of the vision for bringing this together. I don't think we've mentioned it already, but we've had an example of a similar activity a number of years ago in EPSRC, where we funded something between India and the UK in comms, and that small activity has now developed into a full-scale program. And I think that's really what we're looking for here, is kind of somebody who has a vision, convening skills, focusing on the academic side, as I've mentioned, of this activity, but a real plan for how to bring the two communities together to be open and engaging. And so it's not an award that would enable somebody to further their own personal research agenda. And I think it comes with a certain amount of responsibility for the reputation of the UK in terms of our engagement with Canada. So the flexible funding part of the call that I've mentioned that makes it a NetworkPlus. So this is not a call that can fund research. So this pot can't be used to fund research, but it can be requested to have a pot of money that could be used by the grant holders to commission small travel grants, collaboration meetings, or laboratory visits. So it's not suitable for conference attendance, but it could be used, for example, for small pilot projects or feasibility studies where matched funding was available for a Canadian counterpart throughout the course of the award. And it must be distributed externally to the grant. So the named project leads and co-leads or staff employed on the grant can't receive this funding. It can be allocated to researchers at any organisation that's currently eligible for EPSRC funding, but it's not bound by our standard EPSRC investigator eligibility criteria. So there's more information on that on our website, but it does give a little bit more flexibility in terms of making awards for early career researchers and things like that. We would expect in the application for there to be some examples of the types of projects that would be funded, and kind of a management plan for how this fund would be awarded, and decisions that would be made regarding that. It can include both directly incurred and directly allocated expenditure, and it needs to be reported on with the final expenditure statement. So how can Canadian partners be involved in the NetworkPlus? So while the EPSRC funding has to go to EPSRC eligible institutions, Canadian partners could be included as project partners. So in this case, they would have an integral role in the award. They would be providing their resources or their time to the grant, and that would be detailed in a letter of support. And they can receive small amounts in return from the grant for small amounts of travel and subsistence in that role. They could also be included as visiting researchers. So support could be requested for acknowledged standing visitors, scientists or engineers to come from Canada as a visiting researcher, and there's a maximum term of 12 months for that role. Or they could be a subcontractor. So if there was a specific service that was required by the award, like delivering a network meeting or a workshop, then they could be subcontracted, and that kind of activity needs to be justified during the application as to why it needs to be in Canada and why it would be value for money. So just to reiterate that Canadian partners can't be listed as project leads or project co-leads, or slightly confusingly, they can't be listed as project co-lead international, because that's specifically for an agreement that EPSRC have with Norway. The assessment criteria that we will use to assess the applications, this is all very transparent. I'm not going to go through it all in the interests of time, but it is all on our website and the UKRI funding finder, and you can see the criteria that will be given to the assessors. And so they'll be under these categories. There's a vision and approach where you upload 8 slides as a PDF, applicant and team capability to deliver, the partnership with Canada, governance, and how you will manage the grant, and that leads on to resources and cost justification, plans for the flexible fund, the value of it and how it would be disseminated and managed, and then questions around ethics and responsible research and innovation. So within the how to apply section on the funding finder, you can see the kind of overarching question for a section, but you can also see the bullet points, what the assessors are looking for. And as I say, it's a transparent process. That is what we will give to the assessors to judge the applications on. So to assess the applications that we receive, we'll be using an expert panel. And that expert panel will review the applications, and then it will be the same people who will sit on an interview panel. So we will shortlist applicants and invite them to interview, and the interviews will be held in November 2025. There's a couple of links here. If there are questions after the webinar, then you can email our theme inbox, icttheme@epsrc.ukri.org. But if it's related to the funding service, then those inquiries should be sent to the help desk. So I think that's my last slide. So I'll just stop sharing. Thanks, everybody. I can see that there have been some questions that have come in on the chat. Can I encourage Gord, Doug, Glenn to pop your cameras on if you're willing to take questions. And
They're all for you.
Yeah, they're all for me, are they? I haven't looked at them yet. Right, well, I'll encourage some people to ask some questions to somebody else then to give me a break. But Lauren, do you want to fire away with some of the questions and I'll see what I can do?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, we've had quite a few questions for you, Joanna. So the first one is, the call asks for the applicants to have collaborations in Canada. How do you define a pre-existing collaboration with Canada, and do you require funded collaboration?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think when we were writing the call, we wanted to make sure that there was a pre-existing relationship. So I guess academic collaboration, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a joint grant together. I think that there aren't very many examples of joint funded research projects, but we would expect there to be a relationship or a collaboration in terms of kind of academic standing or regular contact at academic conferences, working together in some sense, sharing expertise, that kind of thing.
Great. Oh, perfect. So the next one is, will the NetworkPlus be expected or encouraged to lay the groundwork for a future bilateral research centre or joint programme between the UKRI and EPSRC or any other Canadian funders? If so, are there specific expectations for roadmap outputs or policy engagement deliverables that would support this trajectory?
That's a really good question. So we certainly hope that there will be a future bilateral research programme. I think it's just a little bit difficult to say exactly what that will be at this stage. So we would like to see that bringing together and identifying opportunities so that if we are in a position to launch a programme like that, we have the identified opportunities and possibilities kind of laid out, and we'd be ready to go as quickly as possible.
Great, thanks, Joanna. Another question for you. Can the Flexible Fund be used to support UK-based researchers in submitting small-scale joint prototyping or MPW fabrication products, provided there is matched in-kind support from Canadian partners such as CMC Microsystems?
Yeah, so I think I guess if that is part of what would be designed within the application, as in if you were submitting this what's the word I'm looking for? If you were submitting to this funding opportunity and that was designed in your plan, then it could be an option. I think then you would need to work with the Canadian counterparts. Look at Gord for whether he's feeling enthusiastic to look. I think there might be opportunities further down the line. We have 3 years of funding for this, so I think we would expect to see is that kind of ideas for what could be submitted within the flexible fund, and then seeing that development over the course of the award.
Please do reach out. We'd be happy to field your questions.
Thanks, Gord.
Perfect. So next question, I think you answered this in your PowerPoint, but just to reiterate it. So are we permitted to use Canadian collaborators, e.g. from NRC, as members of the NetworkPlus advisory board or in code leadership roles such as thematic co-chairs? And can we reimburse their travel or engagement costs under the grant?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so they definitely could be included as NetworkPlus advisory board or co-leadership roles. It's just that they can't be co-leads on the grant. But yes, we would absolutely expect them to be included on advisory boards. And yes, that would be fine to reimburse their travel as part of the grant.
Great. And the last question we have at the moment is there a particular reason why the scope of this network excludes key semiconductor materials such as Psi and Psi-G, as well as emerging quantum device technologies?
I think not specifically. There isn't. I think we decided when we were launching this call not to go into an incredibly detailed scope, because the whole purpose of the activity is to remain broad. So it is not that we were trying to exclude any particular areas. I would say from EPSRC's point of view, semiconductors is separated from some of our other activities that are wholly in the quantum or the AI space. So we don't want this network to stray over into some of those activities because we wouldn't want to duplicate them. But the scope was deliberately broad, and deliberately kind of picking areas that were strengths in both the UK and Canada. So no, not an exclusion on purpose.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's all the questions that we have for now, unless anyone would like to ask any other ones.
Thanks, Lauren. It doesn't seem like anybody's jumping in to ask any more questions. I'm just giving people some time, but I don't see anything coming in. So I'm sorry, Gord and Doug, that you didn't get lots of questions.
I'm really happy.
Well, it makes life much easier.
Very much appreciate you being here. So there are routes for questions to come into EPSRC. We will, as I said, be putting the recording from this presentation attached to the funding opportunity on the UKRI funding finder. And the call is open until the 10th of September. So there is plenty more time for thinking and putting together applications. So I think I'd like to draw this to a close and thank everybody who's attended today and for listening and for your questions. Thanks very much for your help, Lauren, Damien, and thank you to Glenn, Doug and Gord for coming and presenting. Much appreciated.
Pleasure.
Thanks, everybody.
Here they go. All right. I'll send you the slides I changed